Well, thanks for coming. I'm super honored to be talking to you today. This is what's really behind infamous historic UI failures, or AKA the chips and pickle story. Okay, my name is Dean Schuster, or Experience Dean on Instagram, Twitter, all that. You can find me if you have any arguments with what I'm about to say today, and you may. I am the principal of a company called True Matter. We're a UX company in the United States, sunny South Carolina to be specific. We do highly complex software, apps, and sites. So all day, every day, we're working with hardcore developers. And so what I do is I go around to development conferences and talk UX and have a lot of fun doing it. Okay. Let's get on with it, to the topic at hand. Pickles. First, I need to understand how many people here like pickles? Sure, it's always dominant. Okay, now, how many people don't like pickles? Is there anyone? Oh, this is delightful. Okay, usually I get like one person who's like, like this. Okay, this is great. So y'all who raised your hand, and we say y'all in the South, in America, this is for you. Okay, now, and I really don't like pickles, okay? Now, here's why. I have reasons for this. I've thought about this. The first reason why I don't like pickles, and I swear this is going somewhere. We're just going to ride this, all right? First of all, this briny juice that comes with pickles, if it's on your plate, it gets into everything in your plate. Now, if you like pickles, like most of you do, that's a delight. That's something you love about them. But if you hate them, like I do, I loathe them to the North Star. That juice infects my plate, right? And that's what I hate first about pickles. And the second thing I hate about pickles is a problem, and I don't know if it's a problem here, it's a problem in America. If you order a sandwich, a pickle comes with your sandwich, whether you asked for that pickle or not. It's a default, as we like to call it. And I have a lot of trouble with that, which brings us to the villain of the story. Now, Jason's Deli is just a wonderful shop. They make great sandwiches in America. I don't think you have them over here. Sandwich shop. Now, whenever I go to Jason's Deli, I will say, I'd like a sandwich and no pickle, please. What do you think happens to me? Yeah, that's right. I get the default every single time. I get pickles. So I decided I would change up how I talk. And I do this everywhere, not just Jason's Deli. And I would say, please, no pickles, okay? And if one's gotten onto the plate, I would like you to just remake the whole sandwich. And that didn't always work. I would still get a pickle. My percentage, and I do have a spreadsheet, was not very good. So I decided to try something else. So I would go to a place and I'd say, hey, I'd like this and such a sandwich. And then I'd say, and no pickles. That really helped me. I could get a really decent no pickle percentage off of that, which is great. Now, I don't know if it's because the server just remembered because the visual added a little bit of something to remember, or if they go back, talk to the cook and say, hey, you better not put a pickle on this guy's plate because, who knows what it'll do. Okay, which brings us back to the villain, Jason's Deli. No matter what I did, always got a pickle with Jason's Deli. Now, Jason's Deli is great, okay? But always, they give you a pickle. Now, I decided, okay, I always get one. I got to do a little investigation now. So I go to the website, and I go ahead and look, and I'm looking for any mention of pickles at this point, any. And by the way, what you're seeing here is half of the menu on the website. All right, Command F, I find one mention of pickles, and it's just a branded name for a kid's meal. JD pickle meal. So they don't even mention pickles on the site for real, yet I always get them. So this gets me a little upset. Now, one day, I had a bad day. Now, I don't know what your bad day is, but my bad day is client wants something stupid. And the director or stakeholder caves immediately to the thing that the salespeople sold that we now have to build. Okay? Bad day. So I want to go and just drown my sorrows in a sandwich at Jason's Deli. So I go there and I order a sandwich and no pickles. And what happens to me? Yeah, I got a pickle. And I'm upset at this point because I'm already having a bad day. And this gentleman comes over, young guy, I don't know, 18 years old. And how is everything today? Asking the wrong guy. And I said, well, I'm unhappy, damn it. I need to understand your pickle process. And so he kind of laughs at me. And I was like, no. I'm serious. You initiated something with an order. And how did we go from I ask for no pickle to I always get a pickle? There's something that happens in between, and I want to understand what it is. And so he says, well, I'll go figure it out. And he walks away. And I'm thinking maybe that's the last I see of him. But he comes back and he says, I have your answer. And I'm like, well, tell me. Do tell me. And here's the answer. On the Jason's Deli cash register interface, there is one button that concerns me here. Now, at Jason's Deli, chips come with your meal. And pickles come with your meal. You choose your chips. You never choose the pickle. This is the button on the Jason's Deli cash register. When you choose your chips, you get a pickle, and that's that for you. You can't have one button for each. God forbid. No. It's the chips and pickle button, which makes me an edge case. So, I decided that I'm going to do a little more investigation because now my ire is up. So I go to the mobile app and I decide I'm going to see if I can get no pickle out of the mobile app. So I go ahead and look, and of course there is a completely inconsistent representation of chips and pickles on the mobile app. There's no logic to it at all that I can see. Other than that, the one type of chip I want, which is the oven-baked chips, only comes with a pickle. There it is. But I get special requests. So I'm thinking, I'm going to give you a special request. Please, 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 for the love of God, please, no pickles. And that's all I got. Didn't tell me they were going to stop at 25 characters. Just stopped. There's plenty of room for more. So I have to now think of a 25-character message. So I got one, exactly 25 characters. That includes punctuation and spaces. Okay, so now, a little more upset, I got another place to write. Now, maybe I'm going to say, I don't know who would actually name their order. I think this is the dumbest thing ever, Dean's Fabulous Pickleless Lunch. No. This is another chance to remind you, no. This is also 25 characters completely with spaces and punctuation. And I just assumed I'd only get 25, and I was right. Okay, so these are bad UI choices. Really bad. Cash register, mobile device. And they've completely ruined my lunch. Now, here's the thing I want you to think about while we're talking about some other stuff, because bad process, human beings actually made this worse. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. But I need to pause and state that I understand in a world full of problems, this is not one. So I thought, all right, if UI can just get me so angry over something little that doesn't matter, what about things that do matter And are there things I could research about UI quirks that caused real problems? And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. And then I promise we're going to come back to the other thing, and it's all going to mean something. And if you don't think it means something when it's over, just put a green thing in the bowl and just keep going. Okay. Now, first thing. Now, some of you might know about some of these, especially if you're American. But some of you might not. And if you have heard of some of these examples, I promise I'm giving you a fresh twist on them. The first is called 38 Minutes to Live. Now, back in 2018, in January, if you lived in Hawaii and you were commuting to work one day, this is what showed up on your phone during the commute. It showed up on the phone. It showed up over all alert services. That includes billboards on the highway. You are about to die from thermonuclear explosion. That's what's going to happen. There's a missile coming in right now. I see the words, is not a drill. It's really happening. So people freaked out. There were car accidents. There was all sorts of problems. Now, because people are thinking, North Korea is not that far away from Hawaii. Maybe one of those missiles can make it. So it's kind of a credible thing. Now, this problem lasted for 38 minutes. Now, I don't know if you've ever been under threat of nuclear annihilation, but 38 minutes is a long time to be contemplating your doom or grandma's doom. Who knows? Now, 38 minutes later, a new message shows up on your phone, and it shows up on all the highway billboards. This is the message. Just kidding. It's not a missile. It was an error. It's nothing. Just go to work. So you can imagine people didn't say, oh, spot on, no problem. Off to work I go. And I don't think about it anymore. No, there's a reckoning to be had. And the next day in the newspaper, and I remember the day this happened, the governor said, somebody pressed the wrong button. And I was like, I don't think so. Okay? Because I'm in a room of people who are thinking, I don't think so. All right? So I want to learn about it. Because this is not an interface that we are going to make. Or is it? Or is it? Because the governor released this list and says, it was really confusing. I mean, look, this is the list we had to pick from. And as you can see, you have PADCOM, CDW, which means something, state only, and then the same thing, but with the words drill in front of it. That means you're going to die, not really. That's basically all that is. Okay, fine. It looks like a list of links. It's not a button. Whatever. Governors don't know anything. But then the next day, they send another thing out. They send this one out. No. This is the list that we used and pressed the wrong button on. So now I know I can't trust anything they say. And I look at this and I think, I know what this is. This is a drop-down, isn't it? And it's got the same stuff in it. And you could see where someone would make a mistake. I got it wrong. Okay. I know it's software, so I did the research, and I found out the company that does all the alert software for most of the states in the United States. And I found their demo. There it is. And I found their training stuff, which a mere month or so later, you couldn't find anymore. And this is the deal. And you basically set up these alerts, and you can set up templates, oh no, earthquake, drill, that sort of thing. Okay, that's cool. It's software. I have no real problem with that. But notice their test nomenclature is relatively clear compared to the stuff that Hawaii was using. That's the first thing I noticed. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit odd. I don't like the fact that I can put tests and live situations in the same dropdown. We have issues with that. But then I get to thinking because, I hang out with software developers. And don't you have safeguards for this? If I perhaps click the wrong button? Don't you? Wouldn't you have to say okay? The answer is yes. That's there. Okay, that was in the software. So the question was, and they did a big report. I read the report. I won't bore you with it. Other than to say they blamed poor computer software design. Okay, I get that, that's true. And they also complained that a problem was something called human factors, which is what we used to call usability engineering back in the day. Human factors. A person screwed up. But the dude who pressed the button said this. No, 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 no. I did exactly what I was told to do. I did it right, and I would do it again. Now, what happened there was he says he's told to press the right button and all that. Now, they fired this guy immediately, and then he countersued. And as far as I know, the suits were settled. I don't know. But no, you can't trust anyone here because the state has a vested interest in saying that guy's wrong, and that guy has a vested interest in saying the state's wrong. They're just, who knows who's right. But here's what the dude said. He shows up during a shift change. Keep that in mind because that's going to be important for later examples. Shows up at a shift change, does not hear that an exercise is going to be done. So he sits down and he hears an announcement. Exercise, exercise, whatever. And at the moment, he picks up the phone instead of listening to it on the intercom. And on the way from the cradle to his ear, he misses the "this is just a drill" statement. And then it says, "missiles incoming." And he's like, and he sets it all up, okay? So this is what he says. I don't know. But what happened is after all the countersuits and all this other stuff is they had to hack a solution because the software had there's lots of stuff wrong with the software we can take all day on it other than to say is you couldn't preview something you were going to send out and retracting it really, really hard. So some person finally, they went through all their procedures and some person finally said, why don't we just send out another alert that's real but use different words? And someone said, okay. And that took 38 minutes. Okay, that basically was the idea. Someone to come to that realization and to do it. Okay, so there's a bunch of UI failures in here. Now, I'll gloss over them a little bit because we could spend forever on it, but we won't. Content strategy, the words we use matter, and users respond and react to words that are in the interfaces we make. And it was obviously awful. Whoops, let's go back a second. It was poor naming. There were multiple confusing choices. I get it. You can make a mistake, okay? But there's live data and test data in the same UI, the same drop-down. No, that's bad. Okay, you can't preview sent messages, and users had way too much control over what they did with that software, which is a big problem. Now, here's the thing, though. This software, the features in the software were the past QA with flying colors. Okay, it worked exactly as it was supposed to work, 100%. There's no functional issue with this. It worked as designed. The real issue here is process breakdown. There's poor communication. There's that shift change I mentioned. They have bad procedures for fixing something, let alone the bad software for fixing something. And no one's trained on this interface. What happens when someone gets trained on the stuff you make? They just like move on to another job, and then the next people aren't trained. And they have problems. Same thing happened here. The people who were set up didn't go to the training because it was done already for other people. And it took forever to get through this response, and boom, everyone blames everyone else. Perfect bureaucratic tornado. Everyone blames everyone else. No one did anything wrong yet. We still had this issue. As far as impact, the way states deal with emergency situations, all of them had to change what they were doing, which is actually really good. That's a good impact, I would say. The software was changed. I don't know if the same company was still doing it or not, but all the states had to deal with this, not just Hawaii. Okay, and that was a big statewide deal. Okay, with me so far? Yay. Glad you said yes, because I don't have a response to no. Okay, let's go back in time, 1979. This may be older than some of you. Meltdown, almost. Okay, this is 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania, United States, Susquehanna River. And in 1979, there was a near meltdown of reactor 2. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the details. Let's just crunch it down into less than 10 minutes and say it was a bad problem. That reactor, if it had truly melted down, would be disastrous. And because of this problem, a lot of people in the eastern seaboard of the United States were considering evacuation. And this took place over a couple of days. It was a big deal. In fact, this happened 2 weeks after the movie The China Syndrome came out. And if any of y'all know that movie, oh my goodness, it was about nuclear meltdown. And then we almost have one 2 weeks later, and people are freaking out in America, okay? Now, so it was a big deal. It had to do with a reactor failure. And surprise, surprise, we're actually going to talk a little bit about the interface that may very well have caused the whole thing. Okay, this is the control room of Reactor 2. This is President Carter. I'm showing you this because he's wearing booties, but he's like one of the only guys. But look at the control room. That's important for later. There's a zillion knob switches. It's either an engineer's nightmare or delight, or both. Now, because of this problem with 3 Mile Island, there was a federal investigation and a federal report, which I have read for you and pulled out the good parts. And these are they. The entire problem occurred because there's this valve called the PORV valve. This valve is just supposed to stay closed so that all the coolant stays in the reactor. That's basically the simple way of saying it. This PORV valve was actually open, not closed, so the coolant was gone, and the reactor is getting hotter. That's bad. I don't know. For all of you who are not totally familiar with nuclear power, hot reactor, very bad. Okay, so now you would say, in the control room, though, there's a little light, and the light's on, and that light indicates that the PORV valve is functioning correctly. And that light was on. So everyone looked. Why is the reactor hot? I don't know. What about that PORV valve, Sam? Light's on. We're good. Light was on. Valve was open, not closed. That's bad. What happened was the signal sent to tell the valve to close had been sent. The valve malfunctioned, did not close, stayed open. That light simply indicates that the signal had been successfully sent to tell the valve what to do. The light's like, I did my job. I'm done. I've got it. The light's on. I told him what to do. Can't help it if he didn't. Well, the problem there is manyfold, because if you have a problem like this, and the first thing you know to look for is correct, you start looking for other stuff. If not A, then B. If not B, then C. If not C, then D. You just move on down the line. And that's what they did, ignoring the PORV problem and just flummoxed as to why everything is still getting hotter and hotter, right? Really major, major problem. Okay, other problems. In this control room, there are no fewer than 50 plus alarms or bells going off at any given time. And that's when things are fine. And back in the day, if an interface widget did not work, you couldn't just, I don't know, log a Jira ticket. I don't know. You just had to say some way of communicating that something was wrong. So people would literally just sort of take a little piece of paper, write, hey, this thing's broken, we got to fix it, and they put it on an element. Now, there are so many of these problems that a bunch of these tags, they're all over the place, they obscure other interface elements. You can't see the problem with another element because a tag's covering it. That was another problem they had. When they're trying to rush to solve the problem and try other things, they're like, is this thing on? Is this thing working? And they're kind of going, they're freaking out because the United States is like, we gotta evacuate the entire northeastern seaboard. It's among the most populous places in the United States. Now, okay, before we say what the problems were, I can tell you that the problem was solved because after a shift change, there was a bunch of people who, I'm going to make this as short as I can, a bunch of people followed the right procedures. You have to do certain things. You can't not. Shift changes, and a smart person says, what if we just really looked at that PORV valve? No, come on, it's fine. They really look at it at this one guy's urging, find it's a problem, and solve it. And what could have been a horrible problem actually didn't end up being that. But it took some creativity, breaking the mold to find the problem. That's a very simple way of saying it. But let's go ahead and look at some of the problems in the control room that should have parallels for us. Function foremost, okay, that means, once again, it works completely as specified, okay? Human behavior did interfere. It actually made the problem worse. And in a situation like this, usability is not exactly top of mind, okay? This was, they didn't bring my company in to do a usability audit of the control room of 3 Mile Island, and maybe we would have found this. Okay, but it's also process failure. It's important to remember. Very bad communication. They were inefficient solving the problem. I mean, this took like a couple of days of real fear in the United States. And they had to go through certain steps, and only when they broke those steps did they actually solve the problem. And once again, no one's wrong. No one did anything wrong. Everyone did everything right, but yet we still had this near meltdown. 3 Mile Island affected the way the United States used nuclear energy from there on out. You could track right from 1979, we decided, no way, we're not going to do this. And so our investment in nuclear energy took a nosedive after this, and the United States energy profile has never been the same, and imagine how different it would be today. Who can say? One little light in a control room. That's it. That was doing its job, sort of. Okay. One more example. This is a little more recent, year 2000, back in the United States, we had an election that was confusing. What happened was, boy, I'll do my best to, in the United States, we don't elect presidents by popular vote. We have 50 different state elections, and it's winner take all in each state, basically, okay? So you have to win a majority of what we call electors. So by population, different states have more electors. California, many more than, say, South Carolina, where I'm from. And you have to get, this magic number is 270. Once you cross 270, you win, you're the president. Now, in 2000, this is Al Gore versus George W. Bush. The red is George Bush, the blue is Al Gore. As you can see here, no one's at 270 at the end of election night, so we can't declare a victor. There's one state that hasn't come in, it's Florida, it's worth 25. Whoever wins Florida, president, okay? We have one problem, though. In Florida, the vote is so close that they cannot call it. It's hundreds of votes in a state of millions and millions of people. Florida is one of the most populous states in the United States, and with razor-thin margin, we cannot call this. So what do? We just got to recount and recount again and again and again and again and again. And for 6 to 8 weeks, I can't remember, we had just no idea who our president was. That's not normal for America. We normally know before the night's over on election night. So, we're safe to say we're freaking out. Now, we found what the problem was, basically. In Florida, in South Florida, to be specific, there is one county, and heavily Democratic county, dominant Democratic county, but we're seeing a lot of votes for this dude Buchanan, who is not even one of the two major parties. In the United States, there are 2 parties and everyone else. All right? This dude Buchanan's from one of those other parties. Not going to do anything. And that dude is a far-right party guy. All right? So if you are in a Democratic stronghold, you don't even want to vote for George W. Bush, basically. You definitely don't want to vote for Buchanan. And yet we're seeing a lot of votes there. What the heck? Because everyone's looking for where the problems are. So we look at this ballot that they use, all right, in this county. And this is the ballot. Now, it's a paper ballot that they feed into a machine, and you take these like metal hole punches, this is really how people did it. You go into the voting booth, you take this pin, and you poke a hole next to the arrow for the person you want to vote for real. Back in 2000, this was considered really old. Now, it's got some problems, as you could see just looking at it. A lot of candidates, okay, but keep in mind, in the United States, only 2 parties matter in a presidential election, but there's a lot of people there. Okay, so you got Republican and Democratic. You've got George W. Bush, you got Al Gore, Democratic, and over there on the right, you got Pat Buchanan. Notice it goes like 1, 2, 3, 4 for some reason I can't explain, and you got that arrows down the middle. Now, if you wanted to vote for George Bush, no problem. You just have one place to go, and you stick that pin, pa-bonk, and you get it done. Now, if you wanted to vote for Pat Buchanan, which no one was really going to do down in South Florida, you could do it if you wanted to. Okay, seems pretty obvious. Say you wanted to vote for Al Gore, though. Do I use the first one or the one near the arrow? Don't know. And there were all these sorts of problems where you'd see a ballot where 2 things were poked out, or one was kind of dented a little bit and then the other one was poked out, or one was poked out and was still hanging on. Called it a hanging chad, okay? And it was a complete mess. Because if you picked the top one, congratulations, you just voted for Pat Buchanan. You didn't want to, but you did, right? And that's the theory, and it's pretty darn accurate. I mean, this is basically what happened. No one really disagrees with this. But it really caused problems, and the recount was terrible, because what are you going to do once a ballot has been cast? You have to count it in some way. It took us forever. It was a real problem. So here are the issues. We're going to call this one really, 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 really bad design, okay? It's very awkward to use this thing, let alone, people with motor control problems. Who knows? Maybe they could have voted incorrectly. It's possible. It does work exactly as it was designed, however. It did function completely correctly. If you did a QA test on this, it would have passed. The design of the ballot fits the machine. There is no choice but to make the ballot a certain way. None whatsoever. If you wanted to use that machine, you had to use a ballot. You had to go left, right, right, left. You had to do all that stuff. Okay, always process problems. This design works for best case scenario only. I'd caution you to develop that way. Okay, no plan for failure, because there's never really any reason to think of a failure, because what happens with voting totals is if there's a problem with votes and ballots rather, and you don't know what to do with them, well, the problem basically is you just sort of don't worry about it, because usually the margin of victory is so big it's bigger than the amount of ballots that have a problem, so you don't care. Not this time. So people had to care, and they had to create all these processes that went to the Supreme Court. It's still argued about today in the United States. And it kind of shook us. We're used to things being easy to understand in terms of our presidential elections. I should say, imagine what would happen if a different president won. Because that doesn't change what that president would do. It changes the electoral politics for every subsequent election. So did we get the right person in? Maybe. It's really hard to say. But that's a big, big, big impact. Now, let's talk for a minute about what all these things have in common, and we'll come back to me and my problems. In every case, this thing worked correctly. Everything we just talked about worked as designed. And humans made all the problems a lot worse. Once a problem started and humans got involved, it didn't become better right away. Okay, now back to me, because this is what really, really matters, is my stuff. And the fact that I hate pickles so much. And the chips and pickle button, I didn't tell you everything about it. Do you want to know why there's a chips and pickle button on that cash register? Because there was only room for one button. That's it. That's the whole reason. They just didn't have room for another button. So we just forced what we were doing into the mold we had. experience be damned. Okay, let's think about the UI UX offenses for me. Again, we're fitting function to interface, right? We have space and we make it work. This is very internally focused. I realize how silly this sounds even as I say it. But Jason's Deli only cares about pickles from their own perspective. Everyone gets a pickle. We're done. I don't want one, okay? But they're focused completely on themselves, and that's a problem with almost all software. Wildly inconsistent, yes, and I get a pickle because of it. It just happens. It's almost like the system is set up to give me a pickle, all right? It's not just a default. It's more than that. Because I also learned a little bit about why I actually get a pickle. Here's what happens. And I can't vouch for the app. The app is just dumb. I just got a pickle regardless of what I did, even though I yelled at them. Maybe that's because I got it. But if I order a pickle in Jason's Deli, no pickle, the guy who takes my order says, hey, Joe, and no pickle on that one, has to voice command over to someone farther away on the line. Now, Joe may or may not make my sandwich. If it's not too busy, Joe may make my sandwich. That's fine and dandy. He may still forget because there's nothing written down anywhere. It's just what someone yelled. But when it's busy at, say, lunch, there's lots of people making sandwiches. And the person that, like if you tell Joe to make Dean's sandwich with no pickle, Joe's probably not making my sandwich. He's going to tell someone else. And he has to remember the audible and remember to say no pickle. It was almost impossible for me to not get a pickle in that process. It's designed to give me a pickle, and a miracle if I don't. And I'm pretty sure I didn't get a pickle once or twice at Jason's, but it happened all the time. So this is Slapdash Process, okay? It's poor edge case testing. I'm the edge case. No testing for me. I know that sounds really, really grandiloquent. Like we're solving the world's problems. We get things lost in translation. There's no controls on it. I always get the pickle. Okay. And that's a problem, right? I've got interface and process working against me. Now, to wrap it all up, I want to say this. The things we do really matter because we build things that people use and make, and we build things that are serious functionality, right? There can be life-saving even, right? So this is just a hospital intranet, okay? That's all this is that we made. And we did a bunch of user research because we do this all the time. And we want to make sure we're doing the right things for people. So, you can imagine, we learn about all the things they need. Like they got to find documents and all this stuff. It's great, it's easy, whatever. And in our research, we find out stuff like this. It makes us very happy. Like, I can't do my job without the internet. To which we say to the people paying, well, it's going to cost you, that sort of thing, right? But this we get too, okay? And nurses would say, hey, when I got to find a document or a procedure, I got to go because they're right on the floor. These things are rolling carts, and they got to find something. They got to go because they have a problem with a patient, and they got to move, and it could be a big deal. Now, when we heard this, we really started paying attention. More so than normal, which is really high, all right? We're like, man, we've got to get this right. And it basically meant to us that when we're creating things for people, whether it's making pickles or whatever, or sandwiches, or dealing with a nuclear facility, every last little thing we do really matters, and we could be the person that sorts out a problem. I mean, if not us, who, I would ask? Because all the people who solve these problems, except for the pickle thing, which actually was never solved, but we're people like us. People, developers, engineers solve these problems. Okay, minor things have a major impact. Every little thing that you do is actually important. The littlest things are important, and everything that we talked about today is little, little, little. A little PORV valve changed America's energy structure forever, basically. Okay, correct function is never enough, ever. Every single thing worked exactly as it's supposed to work, all of it. It would have passed QA, certainly would have passed automated QA with flying colors and easily. It all worked right. So it's never enough that something works, ever. You can change the world with something that works. And I mean for the worse. Process is equally vital. This means that when humans are involved, they affect the things you do and the things you make and how you make them and how it goes. So we have to understand what their processes are and how they use them. I know that's a very big thing to learn, but in every single case where a solution was made, it all came from the ground up. It wasn't consultants flying high saying, we've got a problem with the PORV valve. It wasn't management consultants saying, you know, that ballot is really not usable. It was all people figuring it out from the ground up, how to do something better, how to do it right. So understanding processes can be important for us. And we do have a broader purpose. Things we do matter. I know I'm being silly with the whole pickle thing. It matters to me. My problems are real. But in the other case, real problems, real issues. And I mean, this is really what I want you to take away from the whole talk. If you get that, we're good. We're savvy, okay? Okay, that's been it. That's the chips and pickle story. This is me. You can find me anywhere. Got it, okay. You can find me online if you want to talk to me, if you want to argue pickles or process, or if you found something I said slightly wrong about 3 Mile Island or whatever. Okay, we can do that. Now, I'll answer whatever question you want if we have time. I don't know where we are on time, though. Okay, so if you have a question, I'll answer it. If not, it's been lovely. Yes, sir.
Did the remark field on the mobile app work?
It worked. It didn't. I still got a pickle. So I mean, define worked. It functioned as designed, but it was bad usability, wasn't it? They didn't tell me how many characters I had. They didn't warn me when I was about to be done. There's no error message. There's no error handling at all. Okay, forget about messages. Zero error handling. I just had to figure it out, which I get it. It's not a big problem, but boy, it made me mad. I mean, you know, I'm at my worst as a human when little things like that happen. I mean, really, it's not a pretty sight. So yeah, and then they gave me this much space. Those constrained me to 25 characters and gave me enough room for 200. So what they did mattered. They probably just put something together, didn't think about it twice. It fit the requirements document. I don't know. Wasn't tested for usability. Yes?
How would you, a lot of these situations, they seem to miss like a stress test both for process and for design.
Yes.
How do you usually go about designing for stress tests? Because usability tests happen all the time.
Yeah. That's a good question. There's a number of ways you can do it, but what I would say is in almost every case, you could have solved this with modeling a scenario where use was occurring. If I were doing user research, what I would do is I would observe this behavior as it was occurring and where it occurs, not in a lab, not online, or whatever. The problem, of course, is that you don't know it's going to be a problem. So you can't think, you know, we're going to test that PORV valve in the event it's a problem someday. You know, that's not really going to happen. So that's why people go through drills, which is where we started with Hawaii, to suss out all the usability problems in something. But they're typically following procedure and following function only. So if the procedures all work and it functions as specified, everyone says it went fine. But they haven't looked for outliers well. And they haven't tested from a user experience or usability perspective well. It's usually just a functional perspective or maybe a behavioral perspective. So I would say you have to model those situations, which actually in life or death situations does happen all the time. But it's never enough to say that the function is enough. Someone has to say, is there a scenario in which this could fail, right? I mean, we're trained to do that. We're trained to try to figure out how things fail. And you just need people asking those questions. Could this fail if? What if this happened? What if someone did this? What if they, you could start with, what if they were tired and pressed the wrong button? Well, that's how we got those dialog boxes. Are you sure you want to cause mass panic? And that's old software, but someone had to invent that. That was not always apparent, that you'd have to have some sort of pause at which a user has to say, yes, the thing I said I want to do, I actually want to do. That had to be invented. So if everything had to be invented, then new ways of solving real-world use can continue to be. And we'll need to do that as we get into, we get into AI, we get into more voice, when holograms show up, whatever. I hope that helps. I don't know. I was going to add another example, and that was John Denver's airplane. He was an American singer who flew an experimental airplane. Do I have a minute? I'll tell you that one. Okay, do you want to hear it? Yes. Okay, so John Denver, country road, take me home to the... Okay, I see someone nodding. American? Yeah? Okay. So, singer, and he was known to partake in recreational drugs and flew experimental planes. And he crashed and died in an experimental plane. And everyone blamed the drugs, but it wasn't the drugs. It was the plane. And you could expect this in an experimental plane, that there's some things you got to shake out. You got to figure out the interface. And, admittedly, they figured it out. It just cost John Denver his life. So there was a situation with fuel tanks in the wings of this plane. And if you wanted to switch from one fuel tank to another, you just had to, pull this lever. Whatever. The problem was the lever's behind your shoulder. Okay, so that's fine. You can do that. But already the problem was apparent when John Denver, in order to know which one he was correctly pulling in a tight situation, he put a mirror on his dash so he could see what he was doing behind him. Okay, so that's the first sign that your interface is bad. That's a workaround. That's a hack. Now, if you are trying to reach behind like this, you only have so much range of motion. Now, if you want more range of motion, you stick out your leg and you can reach way back, all right? And that's what basically he had to do. I can't change the fuel. I got to change this fuel tank. I'm out of fuel. And so he sticks out the right leg, moves the arm. Unfortunately, the controls that, is it pitch or yaw? I can't remember. Pitch? Yeah. He hits the rudder with one foot. He's trying to change fuel tanks, hits the rudder when he reaches back, and wham! That was it. So bad interface, basically, killed John Denver. And I didn't include it because it didn't quite fit the pattern. It does tell us that interfaces, little problems, positioning something here where you can't see it, are issues. Process, it's an experimental plane. You expect there to be problems, and every time you go up an experimental plane, you figure you could be the proof of a test, and in a bad way. Not the drugs, just bad interface, if that makes sense. And it just didn't align well with Pickles and people like John Denver, and just who knows the drug reference. That's all I have, though. Thank you so much for staying here with me. Thank you.